Okay. Okay, we will commence the meeting at 2 p.m. on the 21st of October. And just to start the meeting, being the deputy chair, the chairman has informed that he's running a little late, so I will start the meeting and then hand over when the chair does arrive. So he's a short-term apology, but we'll be here for most of the meeting. So firstly, to acknowledgement of country, council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land where we work and live. Council celebrates the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the land and water of the New South Wales Central Tablelands. Now to apologies, Mr. General Manager, do we have any?
No, we have the two councillors just running a little bit late. Bruce White is also on his way. Right, we are. We're aware that he did travel to New York, was it? I think he did mention to me at the last meeting that there would be an apology. So, councillors, I think that'd be appropriate if we did endorse that. Yeah.
Okay, so do I have a mover to Leslie? What was it again? Andrew, Councillor Smith. So all in favour? Against? Carried. Disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest that have been put to you, Mr. Manager? Does anyone within the business paper? Does anyone see any conflicts of interest here? No. Okay, but we do need to move that there are no disclosures, or that we accept that there are no disclosures. So we'll have a mover.
Yep.
Cole, I forgot your last name. Sorry. And I think Councillor Fry. Thanks. Okay. Okay. Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Fry, all in favour?
Right.
Confirmation of the minutes. Now we have two separate sets of minutes and we will do them separately. So firstly, the ordinary meeting of the 12th of August. So do I have a mover? So Councillor Smith, I think it was Councillor O'Connor, the second. So are there any accuracies or concerns with the minutes before we move? If not, all in favour?
Yes.
Against? Carried. Any matters arising out of those minutes that are not in the business paper today? Right, so we shall move on to the extraordinary meeting then of the 9th of September. Do I have a mover? Councillor Fry and Councillor Smith. Any issues arising before we pass them? So all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, so I'll go to matters in progress, which is the General Manager.
Mr. Chairman, I actually reported on an update on those matters in progress. Happy just to run through those with the councillors. If there's any questions, please call out. There's three of them that I have mentioned in the paper. The first one is the State Prosecution Fund. I believe that the chairman had the opportunity recently to attend the joint organisation, and the matter was raised there. So we might just make sure that that item can be discussed by Andrew when he does arrive.
So I wasn't at that particular meeting, so I can't report.
Yes, that's fine.
Unless it was the next meeting, but not that one.
We'll go back to Andrew. The other interesting discussion that we had was Lisa had organised to catch up with the Department of Primary Industry Senior Compliance Investigating Officer, and we had a very good conversation with that young gentleman. And during the course of it, he talked about their prosecution process within the department and how they operate. And Lisa and I both just about fell out of the chairs when they talked about having an independent panel to the Secretary of the Department available to review. The Secretary wasn't comfortable in making a decision to prosecute. They referred it to an independent panel, and that's exactly what Andrew has proposed for the local control authorities of weeds. I've also seen just today the minutes of the State Weeds Committee, and that record indicates that they unanimously did not support the state prosecution. So I think we've got a couple of matters there that we'll be talking to the chairman about when he arrives. The strategic operational plan for meeting WAP targets. This matter was put on the agenda by the council, who had some concern that the organisation wasn't planning and organising itself to ensure that we meet those targets. And I think it was a very reasonable question to be asked. I was asked to bring back a strategy. I had a good hard look at what had been occurring prior to my arrival, and the previous general manager had developed a work plan for 2 managers and for a work plan to actually flow onto individual staff members. So I'd just like a little opportunity over the next month or so just to implement that work plan process with Chris and Lisa and the team, and then have that as the assurance to the council that we are focused on meeting what WAP requires of us, because WAP would be a big part of those work activities. So I'm a bit late on it, and so I'm asking that the matter in progress should be noted for review in February of next year when you return after Christmas, and I can then demonstrate to you the action plan that we've implemented across the organisation, so that the staff are all aware of what we're aiming to achieve in that period. The last one is the strategic roadside spray rotation. We've had discussions with each of the constituent councils about possibly changing the current arrangements. That's primarily around funding, but we're talking about the whole program. And we were well received by the 4 councils. They were all open to receive a discussion paper and to make comment back on it. For this meeting, the main impact of this is we're suggesting that we go to a 3-year cycle. We break each of the LGAs, the 4 LGAs, into 3 equal components of roads, and just have a 3-year cycle. We're in zone 1, year 1, zone 2, year 2, zone 3, and then repeat. So every 3 years, you will have all roads treated. At the moment, we undertake a bit of a review of what's happening out there, and there's a list drawn up in consultation with Chris, and that's presented to each council, and they either agree or enter into discussion about it. So that's been reasonably well received so far, and the paper will soon be available for each of the councils to respond on. I'll bring back a report to this council about what the other councils are saying about our suggestions to move to a 3-year cycle, and we can then have some discussion about whether we're willing to want to change our memorandum of understanding with each of them and move to a different system. I think there's a lot of value in reviewing the program. It's now been in place for 4 years. The cycle that we're getting is that Lithgow's contribution annually has decreased financially, so the budgets haven't extended to the full extent of the program. So if we continue at the contributing rate that Lithgow's currently making, it'll take them 8 years before they get across each road. And I've got a concern that may not be addressing their biosecurity duty. And that would be an awkward situation for the county council to place itself in, where we have a constituent council where we see them breaching their duty. So it'll be a pretty serious discussion when we have to have it about how the program could be changed, and we're compelling the county councils to be a little bit more focused on weeds on roads.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate this will come up later in the night, but you must have discussed this with the council's general manager.
Yes,
Do you want
the
to comment now or later?
The gentleman that I spoke with was
John,
the
engineer.
Yes, and he's the one that I'll be sending the discussion paper to. It'll be addressed to the general manager, and we'll be asking for a response during November. I'd like to be able to bring the paper back to council in December, just to say, well, these are the views of the constituent councils, and for us to then make some decisions whether or not we want to change the program or stick to what the program is at the moment.
Just before we go to Member McKibben, I did realise we didn't actually have a mover and a seconder to note. So just before we go on, can I get a mover and a seconder? Yeah. Member Fry, Member O'Connor. Now, I'll vacate the chair at the end of this discussion because there are a few other matters that the GM brought up before the chair arrived. So firstly, with regard to the council, before we go to those other two matters, is there any comment or discussion about the council or other matters that the GM has just brought up? So,
I would urge the Lithgow members to maybe internally as councillors to work out what their position is in relation to weeds from a strategic point of view. Maybe before the general manager has the next discussion, because it's going to impact. I mean, you're well aware of the implications, Colin and Stephen. So, and I suppose we realise there are financial constraints, if I can put it, but also realise that there are biosecurity duties. So I think it's really a matter for council members, councillors strategically.
Well, we definitely bring it up.
Yeah, to come to a decision, because your staff in regards to the funding allocated and can only make that decision with the decisions you've made in relation to the finances. So I suppose that the general manager's discussion with Jonathan, the director of technical services, or the general manager of the council, he's going to say, well, my hands are tied to the extent, you know, I'm restricted with funds that I
The operating plan, yeah.
So I suppose what I'm saying is before, I don't know when you next week, but I'm saying I think you strategically, if this is the decision you've made, then we've got to work with that. But if there's any chance of looking at it more strategically, bearing in mind there is a biosecurity duty, then I think that discussion should occur within council first.
Budget deliberations, I'm sure, have started.
Yeah.
So a question to the general manager: if Lithgow is not compliant, so if they say no, we're going to leave it at this 8-year rotation that's currently taking place, what would the Upper Macquarie County Council potentially do if there was a breach of the Biosecurity Act?
That's a wonderful question to ask the general manager. That's the reason I'll be bringing that exact question back to the council in December, because you will be faced with that decision. If Lithgow comes back with, well, we're committed to only make these contributions, you're going to be charged with that decision. That's definitely a difficult one.
Well, I can say that our mayor has been very keen on getting highways and particularly looking nice, and so I think we can work on that, can't we?
Yeah, so we can do. I mean,
Well,
I've got the funds.
I think today is too early. The paper needs to get into their hands. They need to read it. We're talking about the benefits of them committing more funds and what that means. It's I will send to you, each member, the discussion paper, so you've got a copy yourself.
Is there any way you could let us know what the shortage that Litco has.
The paper is actually estimating what the increased contribution would be required to
Yeah,
get
that'd
up to
be-
a 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
Yes. And now it's not a lot of dollars in dollar terms or percentage of your budget. So I am a little bit concerned that maybe Weeds just hasn't had the correct discussion in the chamber during the budget process. Because we send the bill out at the beginning of the year, soon after you've adopted your budgets, and you pay that money up front. So we get the benefit of that in our bank account in July and August.
I would assume most councils would have a low risk appetite for any regulatory breaches in the current environment. But we would also note that Litco have just begun an SRV communication piece, so that might help their cause.
Well, Jim, the last thing we would hate to do is have to issue a direction against one of our constituent councils.
Each of the councils have a direction on them.
Oh, they have a direction on
They
them.
have a general direction, so
They have a general direction.
we'll be at the
King's Day.
We'd be at the penalty infringement notice. And the last thing we want, the worst thing we want to say is that the second government entity on which we have issued is a constituent council. I know it won't get to that. So we have to work this through, John.
So I'll say we'll wait for the GM's report to come back.
Yes.
With the potential options. Two other matters that were raised before.
Apologies.
The Chair, and your apology was putting lateness, and also member Watt is coming along, but he's late as well. So firstly, with regard to the State Weeds Committee, General Manager, you mentioned that they unanimously rejected the biosecurity fund.
Yeah, we've seen the minutes that were circulated today of the State Weeds Committee, and it refers to the rejection of the State Prosecution Fund after your presentation. Now, there seems to be some confusion. I was informed that the draft of those minutes didn't mention your presentation.
That's right.
But the minute that's now being published by the State Weeds Committee does mention it. And it says that they had a unanimous opinion that it should be rejected. So there's obviously things at play there. They did refer us to the minister. We're obviously trying to get a voice from them. So I'll just leave it there. I don't think it's a matter that requires any great discussion today, but I think we would be seeking some clarification around some of those decisions.
Well, we sought clarification because the minutes didn't reference it. And the clarification was not everything is included in the minutes. There's a paper gone to the minister.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and the other matter was in relation to the joint organisation and your briefing of the joint organisation of the prosecution fund. And Kevin, you want to provide a quick report?
So I briefed, we had a paper into the joint organisation. I briefed them on the context of the paper, the developments over where we've been in the last 2 terms. I indicated how we got to where we are, how we implemented the register and the rating system, and why we're at the stage we were, which was we've done everything possible to encourage and entice people to comply with their biosecurity obligations. And we're now in a position where we had to start prosecuting because if there was no stick, then people would just fail, either pay the pins, continue not to clean up, or ignore them and directions completely. There was an understanding of that. So the fund was agreed to by the joint organisation. The only reservation raised by Orange is that they did, and this was they did not want the current WAP funding used for funding this biosecurity fund because they believed that all there would be was a redirection of money from the WAP fund into that fund. And therefore councils or control authorities throughout the state would have their funding reduced.
So any questions to Member Kevin on his presentation?
We closed this item, that is in progress.
Yep.
I didn't
The final item.
Yeah,
General Manager?
in the matters in progress, I did comment on the compliance and enforcement intellectual property matter. Just to update you, I have convened a meeting of the 6 county councils, general managers. The first one was very productive, but they were very pleased to hear from a colleague that was talking from the same position, and they did resolve to meet again, and we set a date around the 9th of November. And at that time, we're going to make some decisions about whether or not we have agreed to actually form some alliance, and what that alliance would look like, to develop some terms of reference, etc. They also expressed at the first meeting that they would speak with their chairs, of their councils, just to see whether the chairs may wish to also commence a discussion together about a greater alliance of the county councils that are specialising in leads. They were aware of our risk rating tool. They have, one of the councils was very keen to actually get access to it and to see how it may fit within their business. We've just held back on that at the moment until we get to the 9th of November and have the next round of discussions. That meeting prompted me to encourage the chair and deputy chair to possibly have some discussions with the councils that are within the Central Tablelands LLS region. At the moment, Cowra, Orange, Cabonne and Mid-Western councils are subject to the strategic plan on the LLS for Leeds, and those discussions are now going to commence, and I believe that they have commenced. The chairman at the joint organisation had an opportunity to catch up with some of the mayors of those councils. So I might throw again to.
I think it's in the confidential section.
Oh, sorry, we've moved to confidential, have we? I think
It is in
It is
confidential.
yeah. So that's the update. Thank
Okay.
you.
So any further questions before I go to move this?
So what item are we on here? Sorry?
Matters in progress.
Matters in progress. So
Item number 4.
So with the WAP funding, we've got a date for that now?
Yes. February.
February.
Yes.
And the other items I take are in progress.
Correct.
We did discuss a couple of them.
Yes, yeah, right. No, I'm happy with that. Yes.
Okay, so we've got a mover, a seconder.
Yeah, I'll move that.
Oh, I know, we've already moved it. So,
Sorry.
sorry, previously. So all in favour? Against, carried. I will now vacate the chair as the chair is here and go to McKinnon.
Thank you. My apologies, everyone, for being late.
It's only a rumor, Mr. Chairman, that there was a book open for what time the meeting may have started over there.
Right.
Yeah. And you can see the list. Yes.
Right. Okay. So we on item 5. There's no chairman on the making stage. I think my chairman, section on chairman's minute is actually been included in other papers. Report on the JO and the section with confidentials. The next issue is the governance program and legislative compliance. 611 is the legislative compliance register. The recommendation is that council notes the report. The legislative compliance register has been circulated, and I think we've complied with all our reporting obligations, my recollection. Could I have a move for the recommendation? Councillor Fry, Councillor O'Connor seconding. A discussion on this issue? Okay, all in favour of the recommendation? Thank you, motion carried. Annual report.
Mr. Chairman, the next matters are actually matters of legislative compliance that we have dealt with. So
Under 611.
yes, correct. So the annual report, the compliance with the reporting requirements, we're on our way there. The public interest disclosures have been attended to. The annual disclosures are tabled here today.
That's right. So Do we then have to recommend each of those independently, or you think 611 covers it?
Mr. Chairman, we can deal with them.
I think we have to deal with them individually, yes, they are.
Together.
So 612 is the annual report, which is obviously the obligation of council. That's in progress, I note, so it hasn't been completed. I have just for your note, General, I have prepared my chairman's report. I just need some input into it, so it is in draft form on my computer. So this has to be, I believe, submitted by November.
End of November, correct.
Oh, end of November. Okay, that was beginning, end of November. So the recommendation is council notes the report, I suppose, on the progress of it, because it hasn't been submitted. Could I have a moment? Thanks, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Fry, thank you. Any discussion on the annual report? Obviously, you don't think you've got it yet to have a look at, so there really can't be much discussion on it. Okay, all in favour? No. The public interest disclosures. The recommendation, council notes the report, and council will note that the nil report, there will be a nil report to the New South Wales Ombudsman, meeting a 6-month reporting obligations. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Fry, thank you. Any discussion on this? All in favour of the recommendation? Okay. The annual disclosures.
Mr. Chairman, I have over here tabled.
Yes. So they are tabled. The annual disclosures, council notes the report. Members, annual disclosures have been tabled 21st October 2022 ordinary meeting of council, which is today. Each of us as members have submitted their annual disclosures. Can I have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Councillor O'Connor, the member. Any discussion? No.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a comment. I've been informed through my council that, now I don't know if it's the Office of Local Government or Auditor General, someone is potentially moving around and having a look at potentially auditing some of the councils and potentially county councils, to just be aware that it may be audited. Yes.
Right. Okay. 615 is the registration of the business name Upper Macquarie Weeds Authority. The recommendation is that council proceed to register the business name Upper Macquarie Weeds Authority. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Reynolds, I knew that would be on. Councillor O'Connor, thank you. Discussion on this matter.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman.
I apologise to myself, Charles. Thank you, Member Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, very supportive and appreciate the time and effort the council staff have already put in to look at the process to get a business name, which is more appropriate. And interestingly enough, I was at the field days this morning and was talking to a couple of our constituent members, as in ratepayers, farmers, and the topic did come up, and they thought it was actually a great idea to actually identify what we do as a county council. So, and some positive feedback too about what we're doing, that we seem to be, and they were from the Bathurst Regional Council area, those particular producers, and very positive feedback about the county council. So
One of them has been quite critical in the past. There's a very large
I can guess.
landholder. And they actually, I have to admit, speaking, if I can, speaking to Member Reynolds' point, they actually turned to us and said, "Oh, we understand you've changed your name to the Upper Macquarie Weeds Council." That was the first we knew it had even been said. It had been people have been saying the rest. And the next thing is that the person involved, one of them had written an article in the Western Advocate some time ago, said he was delighted we'd actually started to prosecute someone, And he was even more delighted that we'd issued 4 pins against Transport for New South Wales.
I'll see him when I'm driving home.
I think I've figured out who it is.
We also mentioned that maybe he'd been upstaged by the Sale of Dogs by Chris Staples.
Yeah.
That's a different issue, off the top. So, okay, any other discussion with that? So, if I can, Mr. Gentleman, so we are, because we are constituted as a county council, obviously that has to be our legal name, and we would trade under the Upper Macquarie Weeds Council, as I understand. Weeds Authority.
Macquarie Weeds Authority.
Authority, sorry, Weeds Authority. So we can't obviously change our legal entity, which is as a county council.
Correct.
So you can't, can you rename the county council Weeds Authority?
Can we?
No, we're legislated.
Only with legislative change, right?
Yes.
You have to go through, you have to go through legislation. Major
long process, yes.
So obviously Fridays, but in other, yes, but it does stop confusion sometimes because you've got 2 names that are similar.
So let's.
A lot of,
Yeah,
a lot of companies do exactly the same. They have their
yes,
name and then trading as
Yes.
Lidco tires or whatever,
Yes.
Shadows. Whatever they are, they're never the same name as what's over the door.
yes, but they're never, the only, my question is the similarity here. Sometimes can cause a problem, but I'm very much in favour.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be only in a situation when even an invoice will say trading as Upper Macquarie Weeds Authority, it will have the council name. I could imagine it's only when it gets to a pin stage where you'd have to use the actual real name.
Or any legal proceedings,
Yeah, correct, yeah.
or
So I think customer facing, the Weeds Authority brand will be recognisable from now
the
on.
invoices would probably have to go as up.
Well, I'll have both.
Trading as,
Yeah, that's right.
that's fine, no, I'm happy with that.
Mr. Chair, could I also suggest, given I think it's New England County Council trades as New England Weed Authority, that we just maybe have a quick chat with them when the general managers meet, or as a side meeting, just on how they do parts of their business, so that to help us and make sure any pitfalls are encountered. But Central Tablelands County Council also trades as Central Tablelands Water here. In the building that we're in, so that they possibly also could be a bit of a help if there are issues about, because they trade as a different name to what they're actually registered as.
I think the last sentence you've got in this report states it pretty clearly.
I think I'd like to vote for the recommendation.
You're moving that we vote?
No, all right, any further discussion? All right, all in favour of the recommendation? That's unanimous. So the next matter is the debt management policy. And the recommendation is that council accepts the changes to the debt management policy in place on exhibition for 28 days and place it on exhibition for 28 days. I think is what we need. If after 28 days on exhibition, no submissions have been made, consider an updated policy. Consider the updated policy as adopted. I thank the staff for indicating the changes with with considerable clarity to this policy to make it easy for us. Could I remove it, please? Mr. Connor, sure. And could I have discussion on this, please?
No, you can't.
No problem with it.
So I think the changes are, I've read the changes and thought they were eminently reasonable and solve a couple of the issues that we've had in the past. Because I know having talked to Lisa and said that this was an issue that wasn't clarified about refunds. All right, all in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Oh, that's right, finance, the asset changeover. Which is 6.3, the recommendation is that council notes the report. Do I have a mover, please? Who was that? Sorry, council. Andrew and, yeah. And right. Could I have discussion on this matter, please? Councillor Reynolds, member Reynolds, you know, got some issues with discussion on this.
Not major issues, I'm just wondering an update. I think since the business paper was written, are we getting much interest from dealerships? Is there, given the challenges we've had in the past?
We had 7 of the dealers attend the council when we had the trade vehicles available for viewing. So that was positive, that each of the ones that we had approached did come and view the trade vehicles. We've had some feedback from Toyota that we could be waiting up to 12 months to get new vehicles. So it'll be interesting to see how they actually submit those tenders, knowing of those long delays in getting new vehicles. So if they make a submission for, yes, we can supply you Toyotas and we can't deliver them for 12 months, that obviously won't meet our requirements. So, but Lisa and I will sit and when the tenders arrive and go through a proper evaluation process and determine where we're going. We've only called upon the vehicles that are government contract vehicles. So there's already set rates for them. I think the contributing factor will be whether they're offering us any money on the traders, which are quite old vehicles at the moment. So,
And available.
yeah, and then available question. So I'll have a report back to you on how the tender went at the November meeting.
Member Reynolds.
So 2 points on that. As in, if the trading values are quite low, are we also looking at a potential as an alternative?
Yes, the tender said that we may not accept trades in the process and just select the vehicles for a replacement vehicle. That would allow us then that if we have a variety of vehicles selected, they may come at different times, so we'd have to hold on. We would then either sell the others by tender or by auction. Correct.
And a third question, if I may, Mr. Chair, with regard to the Toyota issue, if they did come and say we can't provide for a period of time, but the price or the unit was right, given that the county council in approximately 12 months' time has to look at the replacement of a further 3 vehicles, I think it is in our schedule, that whether the GM could potentially look at that in the overall and say, okay, well, that if everything meets up, and if we want to progress with the Toyota vehicle, that might be an option to start that process. But just flagging that, given the lag time, that it would be about 12 months that we would look at replacing the next group.
In other words, to anticipate the purchase for the next year's lot.
Only question I'd have, General Manager, is noting that the plant and equipment maintenance in the QBRS, which is the next issue we deal with, has blown out quite a lot. In fact, that we're 23% of our budget to date. By the end of the first quarter, that means to me, and there's a note to that QBRS to say that a lot of it's due to the aging fleet. If we were to do what Member Reynolds has suggested, would that cause us more maintenance issues that we may have to take account of in our finances?
Before you answer, there's been misinterpretation. I was indicating that the first 4 vehicles may be by another manufacturer,
Oh, right, okay.
and that the latter 3 vehicles, if it was so deemed under request for quotation, for the next year's replacement. So we replace 4 now and another 3 next year, but given the lag time, that it might be considered. That's all I was indicating before the General Manager answers.
Sorry, I misinterpreted. I thought you were meaning that we basically ordered what we need now, knowing we're going to get it. So we ordered this year's plus next year's, knowing that now so that we get it then. No,
Sorry,
okay.
Mr. Chair.
Your
I was thinking about commonality.
Mr. Chairman, about the cost of the maintenance, yeah, you'll see that continuing in the budget reports. Some of the vehicles are well outside in warranty periods, and yes, they are costing us a lot more.
If I could, Mr. General, what is have we assessed, noting member Reynolds' comment, have we assessed the benefits to us of having commonality of vehicles for maintenance, for knowledge of our officers in being able to drive any vehicles, saying, you know, system connectivity of Bluetooth, the phones, systems, etc. And how much that is of benefit to us and what that is in, let's say, a dollar figure.
No, I haven't. This tender will provide that information, so you know, we can report back on what it looks like and whether or not we did, you know, went down that line of having a similar vehicle across the whole fleet. I believe that price will be the driving factor. We've got limited resources, so we'll be very much looking at price
And availability.
Yeah,
That's that'll be the issue.
yeah.
So
The availability.
yeah, I think that's especially with
That's the issue.
something that starts with a T. Unfortunately, yeah. All right. Thank you. Any other discussion on this point? All in favour? Yeah, thank you. 6.3.2, which is the quarterly budget review. The recommendation is that council notes the first quarterly budget review for financial year 2022-2023. Can we move, please? Member Reynolds, Member Smith. Sorry?
Nothing, mate, go on.
Will I cut you out?
No?
Right. Do I have discussion on this matter? I think I raised with you a couple of points, General Manager.
Yeah, the point you raised in relation to the rental costs, that's exactly right. We now do rent more space in the building we're in, so the rental costs have increased. My understanding is that that new expense was considered during the budget process. So I believe that we should be able to operate within the given budget. And that might be just a cash flow matter or the allocation of the expense that someone may not have been equally allocated over.
I haven't got that attachment open, the QBRS, but I thought the allocation was, I might be correct, incorrect, 20,000. No, was it 40,000? I can't remember what it was, but I thought we were over a quarter of the expense, but maybe I'm wrong.
Did you want me to go?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Lisa, you'll help me with that, I'm sure.
Sure, so if we're still referring to the rental costs,
Yeah.
I think there's an error in the way in which I've displayed those figures. So because our rental agreement begins on the 1st of March every year, there's an adjustment, and so that adjustment falls, they shuffle it around and put it into the next year. So what I've actually paid, which is what you can see, which is actual with the accruals, you can see actuals, not accruals. So I should have made that adjustment to reference the quarter. So you'll see like the constituent council's contributions. I haven't quarterized those. And there's a few others there that I haven't quarterized. I've actually displayed actuals. Sorry about that. My bad.
Right. Okay. So do we need to amend the QBRS for that?
I don't believe so. However, I am looking into some software that potentially may pick up on the next QBRS that I might be able to implement, which will improve what you see.
We've dealt with plant and equipment one previous question. Are there any other issues on the QBRS?
I just wanted to highlight that with the QBRS and plant and equipment,
Yeah.
with regard to depreciation, when the budget was written, we assumed that we were purchasing all brand new vehicles on day one.
Yeah.
So the 1st of July. So we roughly budgeted, it was slightly not quite the 1st of July, but we came to a figure somewhere in July. So therefore, our depreciation will be substantially lower than the figure quoted in the budget. When it's calculated, it depends when we get these new vehicles. So if it's the 1st of January, it'd probably be around 40,000 or slightly more. If it's later in the year, next calendar year, that'll be less. So what the extra costs of running will be counted by lower depreciation. So impact on our bottom line will be probably
positive.
We'll still be coming out front, even though you'd prefer not to have to spend a large amount of extra money on repairs and maintenance of equipment. So I just sort of clarify that. With regard to the overall QBRS, the important points are, again, from a revenue point of view, because we can't get flupropionate for serrated tussock, and we've wound back the aerial spraying program, our revenue will be down, and the component that we've budgeted for wages in that aerial spray program will be reduced, but I don't know by how much yet, and maybe we might want to have a report on what the expectations are of the Blackberry aerial program, but that will have a negative impact on our bottom line. So just highlighting that as an impact. And also in the budget, we have budgeted for our staff to do a proportion of the council roadside spraying, not a substantial proportion, but I think it's about 20% of the roadside spraying. So if we weren't to do that, we would be worse off again with the contract in, because we haven't budgeted for that. So we've budgeted for, I think it's about 80% contractors, 20% internal. If that figure changes in a negative way, i.e. 90% contractors, it will have a negative impact on the bottom line of Upper Macquarie. On the other side, we have budgeted a fairly substantial amount or reasonable amount, was conservative for the sale of vehicles, because they're all written off, that will be a profit. So that will come in on the other side. At the moment, it's allocated for prosecutions. So you might see there's quite a substantial amount of money there. So there are some some positives and negatives that, depending what happens over the next 9 months, on what the bottom line figure will be. And these are probably more substantive in any outcomes than some of the other minor variations that are within the report. So I just thought I'd clarify on a few things, given that I was heavily involved in writing the budget back a number of months ago.
And I think on the under 7.1, we'll definitely look at the aerial program and what we, to give us a better idea of where we're heading with that, and see, obviously it's secure in relation to the Blackberry side, but you know, it may end up being bigger than we anticipate too, with the current season we've got. The landholders that come forward, but they'll ask the general manager when it comes to that point. Okay, so any other discussion on the QBRA?
Mr. Chairman, can I make one comment on it? The amount of time that takes us to generate this report is ridiculous. We will come back to you with a recommendation around acquiring some software to assist us. This is a very manual task from our accounting system to be able to do this. The chance of error in it is high. There's a lot of manual work to be done, and it's done by Lisa. And while Lisa is trying to keep up with other tasks as well. So when I come to you with the proposal to use some software that is commonly used in local government to develop this report, the problem that we have is that we also have a task of reviewing our chart of accounts. It's very old, it's pretty well outdated. We've got some mapping already done for our annual reporting requirements, but we now have to consider that, and also the software that is available. We need to be able to improve our ability to financially report by pressing buttons on our systems rather than extracting detail and dropping them into spreadsheets. Yeah.
Okay, so do we anticipate that being available next meeting or in the future?
Got a quote at the moment.
Yeah, we're looking at a quotation, but before we present just the dollars, we want to have a look at the software and so that's before we test it.
Can we give you a trial?
We'll see if it's been used in another council.
Exactly, because we're very small, where our financial accounts are very limited. This software mostly is developed by generals councils that have got all the cost centres, and ours is really focused. So I'm not too sure whether the local government software solution into where we're going, it might be better looking in the private sector for something that works for us as well.
Okay, so we can't tag on an existing council system and get the benefit of their
Well,
license.
that was really interesting in the discussions with the other 6 county councils. 3 of them have all their finances done by one of the constituent councils. So that is definitely something that I think we should be looking forward to. It's
Because they all have software that does their QBRS.
Absolutely.
Drags the material directly off the
Yes.
off the accounting system and there.
Yes.
So I don't know that we want to be reinventing the wheel.
correct.
Ask for quotes from the constituent councils.
There is a section of our business paper today where we'll be talking about communicating with the other councils in the region and the constituent councils. So I think the opportunity will be there in the next months to actually have such discussions.
They're always offering assistance where required. So
They
I
are,
think we should take that
they
up.
are, and I don't think we ask enough. I don't think we
So,
engage enough.
yeah. All right. Could I have, please, we've had a second. All those in favour of the
Chair, I do have a bit of
Oh, sorry.
information. Firstly, with regard, as I chair the Canola Zone Bushfire Management Committee. Canola Zone use Orange City Council to do all their accounting. So I'm just while they're not a county council, as in it's a constituent organisation. And secondly, it totally made me forget what I was going to ask.
Central Tablelands Water, who do they use?
I think they do their own, but they're far more complex, far bigger business, and have a lot of ratepayers, etc. So there was another item that I can't remember. We'll move on. Number 5 once we move on.
So, any other discussion on this matter before I precipitously move that the recommendation be accepted? All in favour?
6.33.
6.33, the investment report. The recommendation is that council notes the report on the updated investment position, which is tabled on page 23. Mover, please. Councillor Smith and Councillor Connor. Discussion, please.
Are interest rates going up?
That's right, so
Are they?
slightly, I think, yes. So we've amended our investment policy to allow us to be more in line, so are we seeing benefit of that? Sorry, member Reynolds.
I was just about to ask that, Mr. Chair. Now, I assume that our investment policy has passed and there is no feedback. It was put up on the website. So does this enable the general manager now to look at investing for, say, 12-month investments, etc., as opposed to a general? I know just an open account where I think you've got to give about a month's notification or something like that to get to this money. My council, General Purpose Council, is earning well over 4% at the moment. And given inflation is hovering 6, 7, 8%, whatever. I don't know what the treasurer said today, but it was looking pretty.
2%.
So I would just, the question to the general manager, is the general manager looking at whether we can either with Westpac, which we're currently with, or with other banks to try and get a better return?
I'll seek some support from Lisa in relation to our investment arrangements. I know that we are having discussions with Westpac, but I have not given the matter consideration.
Could I ask that maybe
Yes, we will.
Next meeting that we update us on, because I think, when was the exhibition period? When did it finish?
It's passed.
Yes,
And we had no submissions.
that's what I'm saying. So it's probably appropriate for the next meeting to have a report just on as a result of investment policy, we have moved investments as follows or something.
Yep.
Just to, and we are obtaining better interest rates. So just give us, paragraph or two.
Thank you.
And one other note, compared to our budget, Mr. Chair, we're well ahead of budget already. I think we're exceeded budget in the first quarter with interest rates.
All right, all in favour of the paper? Unanimous, thank you. 6.4 human resources, general manager's performance review, the recommendation is that council notes the report. As you're aware, the Chairman and Deputy Chairman undertook a performance report, and that in accordance with section 223 of the Act. And I think we dealt with it in confidential. Yes, deal with it in confidential. So can I have someone to move the recommendation? Second it. At this stage, I don't think there'll be any discussion. All in favour? Discussion will occur in confidential. 6.4.2, which is the organisational structure. The recommendation is that council notes the report and note there that there is a target for that to be presented to council in November. Could I have a meeting, please? McBride, O'Connor, discussion, gentlemen? All in favour? Thank you. Item 7, which is landholder support program, and in particular 7.1 is the aerial spraying program, autumn 2023. The recommendation is council notes the report. Could I move, please? Member O'Connor, Member Smith. Thank you. Discussion, please. Could I ask the general manager if there's any update since the writing of this report and the number of landholders that are interested, and we're arranging for mapping and meeting with landholders?
I'll ask Chris to assist me in answering the question, please, Chris.
From the time the report was written to now, those numbers are still current. So we've got 10 properties that are mapped and signed up for, another 36 that are being mapped at present.
So compared to last year in area, I'm talking about the autumn program, the area and number of landholders, how are we comparing at this stage? Bearing in mind we're 5 months before.
We're still, so we've still got time to go. We are getting a lot of feedback at the moment. People are interested, but they don't know exactly how much area they're going to do it at present. And that's sort of been arranged more as they're getting that, when people are getting an idea of what they're exactly looking at.
So last year in the autumn program, how many landholders we had? Remember?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it was around about, was it 50 or 60?
I thought it was 56 or something.
More,
60,
more.
70, 80. 80. And what area were we talking about?
1,000 each, average.
1,000 hectares. So we're looking at 80,000 hectares.
No, straight to Tussie, 1,000.
1,000 hectares in Tussie,
1,000
1,000
hectares.
Right. So this year we're looking, so we're looking at least 1,000 hectares. If we get the same, so 80 was for 40 for Serena Tussock, 40 for Blackberry.
No, it's not, that wasn't the Jenny. It was more, yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, more Tussie. Yeah.
There's more Tussie than it was Blackberry.
So if we got 40 landholders with Blackberry and 1,000 hectares, that's probably what we're looking at as a being positive.
Yeah, and then we have we have a handful of Serena Tussie ones where the landowners have chemical on hand themselves.
So how many would that be?
There's about 4 or 6 that I know of.
So it's worth doing them. We can take up okay, it's good. And we'd be doing that in autumn as well.
Yeah.
Same time.
Run one at the same time.
Yes.
Chris, so we've got land, quite a number of landholders with 1,000 hectares of.
No. There's 1,000 hectares for the program in total.
Right.
Yeah, not quite that bad.
No,
That's a lot of blackberry. It should be selling June.
Well, with the way the season is, you know, there could be a lot of, some.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
1,000 hectares of the Blackwood. All right. Any further discussion on this matter?
I'll pick it on it.
All right. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? No. No. Thank you. 8.1 roadside spraying. I think this recommendation is that council notes the report. I know that the general manager did. I note that the general manager did discuss some of this earlier on today. Can I move it, please?
I'll move it.
Member Leslie and Member Watt. Thank you. Discussion on this matter.
I have been making some notes here so that I can take these thoughts back to our general manager and to our director of operations, and just point out the disadvantages of not being supportive of the Upper Macquarie County Council's road spraying program on this matter.
Well, thank you. As I said, we appreciate financial constraints, but obviously there's also fire security, and I'm sure that members Leslie and O'Connor will really represent this very unified committee's understand.
Mr. Chairman, I need to just correct something in the report. At the time of writing, I was confident that I would have the actual discussion paper with the other councils by the meeting. So the report indicates that that letter has been sent. It has not as yet. The discussion paper will go to the councils during next week, and at the same time, I'll send it to each member. So you may hold off on your discussions that you plan until you get the discussion paper, and if you'd like.
That would be handy, only simply because we actually have a council meeting on Monday week, 31st this month. We would have had it on Monday. We'd love to have a conference. And yes, that's
The timing works well.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify this, a letter has already gone to the constituent council setting out what was done in 2021-22.
We sent to the constituent councils
Yes.
the history of the program. That's 4 years of data about the program.
Because, and I think it's important,
So we've had a discussion on the telephone, Chris and I, with each council about that data, and informed them that we are developing a paper for them to comment on. And then, Mr. Chairman, we plan on bringing those comments back to the county council to give further consideration whether there is a reasonable argument to make amendments to the program.
so I know that Oberon Council received this letter, and in doing a report on the Upper Macquarie County Council, which I do to Oberon Council, which I will do for the next meeting. I intended to do it for the last meeting, but I didn't get a chance. For the next meeting, I'm intending actually putting that report, your letter, as an attachment to my report, so that the councils can see it as well. Now that was 2021-22.
Yes.
I'm wondering if also would be appropriate the letter as a second attachment, the next letter that you're sending is the proposed, so that councillors in our respective councils can see what the past is and what the future is. And I would commend us as members to maybe prepare a paper to put on top of that. I'm quite happy to, to circulate the one I will do for Oberon, so you've got a template, so that our respective councillors in each of our constituent councils also know what we're doing, because I think it's important they know what we're doing. It doesn't just sit with the relevant general manager and the technical services director, but that was my intention. Is there anything in the letter that should not go to councils?
Mr. Chairman, I'll follow the appropriate communication with the councils. I'll write to the general manager.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying.
I'll also share with the members here the paper. So if you're suggesting to the members that they progress it in the chamber,
I'm more concerned that as the strategic holders of the strategic movers in each council, that the councils are aware, so that they know what's happening. because that creates greater strength in
Oh,
getting it done.
Mr. Chair.
Please discuss that if any members have a
Yeah,
different
if you could pass it on to me, I'd be happy to do the same. I think it's important, given our current circumstances with some constituent councils, to emphasise the seriousness of the Biosecurity Act. And as we all enter budget deliberations in the next coming months for the 2023-2024 operating plans. Also had a question probably for Chris regarding the roadside spraying program through you, Mr. Chair. I'm on another committee called the Ben Chifley Catchment Steering Committee. And it was made aware to me as a new member of that committee that they also do a bit of roadside spraying. They let me know that they liaise with you somewhat as to what roads they do and don't do. I just want to get your view on how well that liaison happens, if at all.
Yeah, so we approached them a little while ago, just to find out what their plans were for this year. So they're planning to write back to me and let me know what they're up to, just so that we can work around it and not double up or miss sections thinking each other's doing the other. So they normally do, as you know, some roadside spraying, but what only falls within that catchment area. So that's why we try to touch base with them as we're going along, both back and forth, so we can keep an idea.
Do you think that their particular, it's small budget, but I feel the people that do it for that committee, it's high value, so they don't charge much to do it. I think the money really goes into the product. Do you think it's of value for them to continue that spraying program, or is it adverse to you? Or what's your opinion on their particular program?
Sort of a hard one to answer straight away.
That's right. I'm happy to share with you.
Happy to come back with a
Yep.
little more of that.
Let's take it on notice.
Please.
Come back
Yeah,
if you can.
no worries. Thank you.
I've seen the effects of both because I live in the area, so it's affected. But I'm also on, declare an interest, I'm also on the Ben Chifley Catchment Committee. I think the spraying I've seen is very effective, but then I could be biased because I use the same contractors. No, it was a Ben Chifley, yeah. Dollars, yeah.
Well, I just wonder that my probing question is down to whether that committee, it's actually for the benefit of that committee, whether they're spending that money the best they can, if you know what I mean. So I'd just be interested to hear that, but yeah, by all means, come back to me, sure.
Thanks, Siri.
Thanks, Siri. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
All right, any further discussion on this? Yeah, sure. All in favour? All right, thank you very much. We move to 9, biosecurity compliance. And 9.1, the recommendation council notes the report to the mover. Member Smith, member Connolly. Discussion on the report. So, if I could, through you, General Manager, it seems that the re-inspections were nearly half, but we had a considerable number of first inspections as well, 266, which is good because we were lagging behind on the initial inspections because we were doing so many follow-ups. So we've actually managed to do 266 new inspections. I will comment when we get to I've made a couple of comments to the General Manager when we get the confidential reports. We'll wait till we get to them. 14 properties beyond the 90 days. Okay.
Just if I can.
Yes.
So all those, so at the time of the report, as at the time of the cutoff point being the 30th September,
Yes.
there was 14 properties past the 90 days, but at the time of writing the report, there was only 3 properties. past
So
the
it
90 days.
dropped.
Yeah.
So when we get to the report, maybe you could update us.
Yeah, because
that
there's
was-
3 active properties in that 90 days section.
So maybe you could talk to that through you, General Manager, when we get to the confidential section, so we don't diverge into areas. Okay, any other discussion on this report? All in favour? Thank you. Oh, sorry. We usually.
I got that.
I was about to consider this. For your hand.
Hey, you gotta be quicker. You gotta be quicker and more
I'm
prominent.
sure the video will show. Just very quickly, there's only 31 and 266 high risk. Are we getting on top of the weeds, or why such a high proportion? 235 of low risk inspections.
There are first inspections.
Yeah, I know, but it's still a very low number. I think, given that, is there a reason why there's such a high proportion of first inspections are low risk?
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's hence my question. Are we getting on top of weeds, or why have we just had such a low level?
And partly is that. Or should we leave it to the confidential?
Yes, leave it.
Okay.
Can we leave that? We can leave it confidential, but we will put it, because I've got a question on it as well. Okay. So is there any other discussion on this matter? I don't want to be precipitous.
No more, there's no more.
All in favour of that report? Thank you. 9.2, penalty infringement notices. Recommendation is the council notes the report. Can we move it? Right, member Brian. Thank you. Discussion?
I know that Chris earlier, just probably an extension on the actual information there in the reports, like with the pins owing and stuff, like a bit more breakdown of the detail of time frames outstanding and that.
Yeah.
Which Chris has already acknowledged previously in this meeting.
So my question is, if I can, if any other questions? Oh, yes, no.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, could you tell the pin's withdrawn? What's the story there?
You want me to address that, Chris? Yeah. The withdrawal process, Bruce, is where the person that's received it has an opportunity to ask for a review of the PIN, and a lot of the people that have received them ask for the review. Now, the way the review works is that the state revenue, they send that review information to the general manager of the council, and I then look at the situation of why we raised the PIN and listen to the argument that they're putting about the unfairness of it, etc., and I make a judgment on them. The types of things that I've identified there, we are now doing some analysis of them, so I can bring that back to council about the types of reasons that I accept the argument of the person that's received the PIN. Some of them are around hardship situations that they present to me, others around health issues and hardship. So they really are people making a plea because of their circumstances to actually not pay the $1,000 and giving commitments to proceeding with undertaking the work. But without naming any persons in the report, I will offer you up some analysis of what those 20 withdrawals are.
So again, if I can just follow that up, please.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, so you feel that the process is being successful in that they're saying, sure, look, if I can not pay the $1,000, that'd be great, but I'm going to proceed. So proceed with the weed control.
Remember what I've identified is two things: that we have got some administrative error in the process of actually issuing the PIN, and so we've got some correction to do there with our system of actually issuing them. But the other side of it is that it says to me that maybe the communication we're having with the person that we end up penalising isn't detailed enough. We don't have enough knowledge of the circumstance of the situation, and whether or not that is a shortfall in our communication with them, or whether or not some people just when they receive a penalty they want to appeal it. So please let me just do the analysis, and I think it'll become clearer to you the type of circumstance, because the majority of them are very reasonable circumstances with people having really bad mishaps, cancer operations, they're hospitalised, they've been unable there's been some reasonable arguments. Now, I've also been quite harsh on these as well, because the way the penalty notice is issued, it's retrospective to a date. So we're saying you haven't complied back here when they get the PIN. They argue the point about their circumstance when they receive the PIN. I respond on what the circumstances were when we issued and when the non-compliance occurred. And in many of the cases, their arguments don't hold.
Yeah.
Because their circumstance is something here, back then wasn't that.
They've done something a year ago.
Correct. So, yeah, it's a new area to us, like we're now regularly doing this, with the issuing of the PIN. So I think we're going to learn a lot over these first couple of months. Yeah.
Just because they broke their leg yesterday doesn't mean they shouldn't have done the work 6 months ago.
Correct. Correct.
Yes, never sure. That's it. Sorry. Well, I've got a minute later.
Like, I get that and that makes sense. I like to see the outcome of that. I'm just wondering, is there a little bit of I just feel if a penalty infringement notice is issued, 9 times out of 10 our staff are acting upon what the direction is there something around the language of a deferred on special case to give that little bit more accountability and re-inspecting a second time, or is it just a flat out withdrawal?
Well, I think that's what the analysis will demonstrate to us.
Because I just think that
Chris is basing it on the information at the time that he has, and he also inspects the property himself prior to it. But that's making an inspection of whether or not they've been compliant. Chris may not meet with the property owner on those inspections.
Yeah, no,
So he's not getting the circumstances around what's occurred on that property over time.
Yes. If a PIN is withdrawn, then they are issued with another direction moving forward, so they're given more time.
I just think accountability once you've got a PIN, if there's an accountability there through a deferred, still holds a little bit of account. You're issuing a new one, which is starting a process.
Also, it's the continuation of the process.
And it captures their full attention, $1,000 fine.
Yeah, 100%.
So we're not going back to square one, we're going back to, so we're not issuing a week control notice, we're going back to where the direction's issued. So that's already.
We're still going past that step.
We're moving forward on each occasion. It's when we get to the prosecution decision, which we've discussed a lot and we'll discuss again in a moment, that is the block. Because some people are happy to pay $1,000 PIN and just continue to do nothing.
That's right. Yeah. That was what was discussed today with the New South Wales Farmers President. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for the General Manager. Do you think we could expand that table just to include the 2 last reporting periods as well for a compare?
Oh, sorry, that's from day dot.
Yes, we know that.
Sorry.
Yes, but how many?
How many fresh ones?
And that, thank you, Member Fry, because that raises a question I was going to raise.
That's okay.
I don't believe the number of pins issued has increased markedly from the last meeting. I thought we were around 80.
76 or something.
No, it's close to 77, 9 or 80.
Let me work on that report so you can see the ones issued since your last.
That's why I'm favouring also what Member Fry says, because I don't think that number is substantially changed from last meeting. And with the number that we had, I have to be careful of this, but we have a confidential report with the number of those to which they looked as though they were close to exhausting the process to get to the PIN stage. I was expecting that number to go up substantially. But I have a look at that. Maybe yes, come back with it. All right, Member Fry.
Just another question for the General Manager. When you review those pins, the ones that have been withdrawn or the ones that they haven't been withdrawn because you've been hard on them, or just stuck to our guns, are there any, just out of interest, are there any of them trying to review the fine or the infringement notice based on not respecting or not accepting the authority of the organisation?
We usually get those arguments when they get their first direction. They move from a weed control notice to a serious direction, and it's more legalistic, the document they receive. That's when they start to press on, you're a silly little agency, go away, etc. The PIN, they're already in the game by the time they get the PIN. Right. No, we are serious about it. In that they've got at least one direction. They've moved to their second direction to get the PIN. Yeah. So
too far into the process to start questioning the authority.
Yeah, I think so. But what I have noticed, Member Fry, is that it's our communication and getting in touch with the person, actually knowing who we're dealing with. Because a lot of the land that we're talking about isn't occupied, or it's under lease agreements, or it seems to be that there is a lot of property that has a weed problem on it that isn't your normal farm. It's owned by people that don't live there. And they just, when they lodge their review request, they're really strange. Like, what are you talking about? You know, I don't know anything about this. I've never heard of your business. No one's ever spoken to me. Those types of things. So I'd like to think that best practice is what we're going to be talking about at the moment in the closed session, about that we need to actually meet the person. We need to make contact in some way as these levels of enforcement increase. We can't get to the end of it not knowing who we're talking to.
Copy. Thank you.
And I think with the notice with the weeds authority is far more better than the Warwick County Council, because people don't know what they stand for.
Correct.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, the question we'll deal with later is how many of the bins with water are subject to the identity of the recipient may not be correctly identified. But let's, all right, any further discussion on this matter? All in favour? Unanimously, thank you. We go to 10.1, County Council meeting schedule. Council adopt the proposed meeting. We have a, yes, you're proposing it, or? Yes, thank you. Second up, 3 weeks. Member O'Connor. That's right.
And I make a correction though,
Yes,
it's already the 21st of
I know the 21st should be deleted because that's the day.
So it's only the 18th of December. And the question, should we also be starting to look at next year's ones in there, or a little bit next council meeting? I should.
Now, at this stage,
Yes.
I've just asked the general manager to brief us on a proposed Christmas function.
The chairman asked me to canvass the view of the team about having a gathering of the members and members' partners and the staff and their partners prior to Christmas. And we've proceeded with that idea, and that's going to occur on the 20th of December, Tuesday, the 20th of December. You'll get this in an email as well, but if you want to grab the date now, it's a 12:30 start at the Bathurst Bowling Club. You can either wear flat shoes or go without shoes, because we will be having a game of bowls. I'm very competitive, so it's unprepared. Bowling will finish by 1:30, and then we'll be seated together and enjoying the barbecue together. And we'll be having competitive, but are you in good team? I am very good at the game, Chris.
You only need to be good on paper. You do know that Tim, you do know that I'm the current Go Singles champion.
Are you really?
I think we have
Got to get a handicap.
Workers Club, that is.
Yeah,
No, we don't.
got my diary.
No, you don't.
Well, you have a council meeting.
Yeah, that's the only problem. Yes,
I run away.
What time's your council meeting start?
5:30.
Oh, plenty of time.
Roll there.
You need a driver to take you home.
This function ends at 3:30, and remember, this will be, it's during work time, so I'll be talking with staff about this is a work function, and we'll have to manage all the occupational or work health safety issues around consumption of alcohol, etc. So I don't believe it'll be a great big booze up or anything, and it will conclude at 3:30.
Okay,
What was the starting time?
all those in favour?
Modification.
With the modification by deleting on the first.
The aerial spray rig's not doing much, you can take it even more.
Right, item 11, there are no notice of motion or rescission. Can we go to the now? The next motion is that the council moves into confidential. I'll read it, this one. I'll read it.
Yeah.
I think I have to read it also, actually. That'll be. So, the motion is the council notes in accordance with section 9(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 1993, the general manager is of the opinion the business on the agenda designated confidential listed in the following table one is the kind referred to in section 10(a)(2) of the Act, which should be dealt with as part of the meeting closed to the media and public. And further, in accordance with section 10(b)(1) of the Act, it is considered the discussion of the business is open meeting would on balance be conflict of the public interest. The council resolved to close confidential committee of the whole council consider business identified as confidential together with any confidential late reports tabled for meeting pursuant to section 10(a)(1) and 3 of the Local Government Act 1993. The media and public be excluded from the meeting on the basis of the business to be considered as classified confidential under provisions of section 10(a)(2) of the Act. Correspondence and reports relevant to the subject business to be withheld from access. And in accordance with section 10(a)(4), members of the public are invited to make representations to the council as to whether the matter should or should not be dealt with in the confidential committee of the whole council. Table 1 refers to 12 prosecution cases, and the reasons for confidentiality is section 10(a)(2)(e). 13 is consultation with Central Tablelands LLS regions councils, and again section 10(a)(2)(c), information that will be disclosed for a commercial advantage of the person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business. 14, weed biosecurity property inspections for June 2022. Section 10(a)(2)(e), information that will be disclosed prejudice the maintenance of law, including privacy and personal information. Could I have a mover to move us into move for that motion to move us into confidential? Member Leslie, seconder please. Member Fry. Good. All those in favour of us moving into confidential for the purposes of that meeting. Could I ask that the recording cease, please? So, confidential, the following motions were put and passed. The recommendation for the restitution classifications were noted. The report. Back in here. Yeah. Well, right. So the recommendations are one, that the paper on the prosecution patients, the recommendation was noted by council. 13, the recommendation in relation to consultation with Central Tablelands LLS Regional Council. Read the recommendation. It is recommended the council endorse the proposal for the chairman, deputy chairman, and general manager to make representations to Carrickabon, Orange, and Midwestern councils discussing the UMC compliance and enforcement policy, the weed inspection risk rating tool, and the register imposing greater reliance on weed management practices across the Central Tablelands LLS region. And the third one, 14, biosecurity property inspections for July, August, and September 2022. The council notes the report. The next meeting will be the 18th of November 2022, 2 p.m. and it will be at Lithgow in the council chambers.
To be determined.
To be determined.
I would think, it might be at the university, so I don't know.
Okay. Note that, the location.
Which is right beside the council chamber.
Location is Lithgow to be advised by the general manager. No further business. I declare the meeting closed at
4:16.
4:16. Thank you.
Bruce Watt.